If you ask me about who is the character that has a fundamental role in this arc, my answer will be one word: Souken. Hello guys, it's me Simo Urahara, and in this video we'll talk about one of the amazing characters in Bleach. Yes, this odd person with these soft face features. That teacher who loved peace and wanted coexistence between races, not as we used to think. That man has a different story, and not as his grandson Yuryu thought. But before we dive into the topic of this video, I need some of your reactions. Click like if you like the video, give your feedback through a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you like the content. And if you want to support me, you can be a membership in my channel or through super thanks, or support me on Patreon. And as always, a big thanks to my supporters. So we're gonna talk about one of the most complex characters in the story, whose past hides many secrets that has something to do with the Quincy's, and Yhwach, and the war that took place 1,000 years ago, and the secret of Yuryu's survival, as well as how he reached the solution that led to defeat one of the strongest characters in Bleach universe. Souken's life remains a mystery, and his death is shrouded in a lot of mystery. Is it possible that someone like Souken would be defeated by 5 hollows? I don't think so. And for this, we will dive into all these questions and search for their answers according to the new information that is available to us now. So more than a year ago, I made a special video about Souken, and I said in it that Souken Ishida undoubtedly knows all the secrets of the Wanderer, and that he is the link between the Quincy's of the shadows and the Quincy's of the real world. He was a Sternreiter within the Wanderer. He also had a family in the world of living, the Ishida family. Thus, in order to talk about the mystery of this character, we must start talking about his real age. Is he one of the Sternreiter who existed 1,000 years ago, such as Busby and Hirschfeld, or was he born later and then joined the Wanderer? I mean, can we say like he was like the Sternreiter Robert, who is one of the Sternreiter who has great knowledge of the mysteries of the Wanderer? Because the new thing that we have now is the diaries that Souken wrote and collected in his book. Because this book, guys, is a treasure trove of information, because Souken collected in it all the secrets of the Quincy's during 1,000 years ago. For example, one of the things that frankly shocked me is this page. Imagine that Souken wrote about the period in which the Quincy was subjected to the first extermination 1,000 years ago. And what is shocking about the matter is not Souken's talk about that period, meaning we can say that he may have heard about that war from someone else in the past. But for Souken to draw that scene of Yamamoto using his Bankai or his Shikai and killing the Quincy, and the drawing is literally identical to what occurred 1,000 years ago, this only means one thing: that Souken was present and saw the scene with his own eyes and only portrayed what he saw. Otherwise, from where Souken got that drawing? And one of the things that's still mystery: did Souken participate in the war in which Yhwach and his army went to the Soul Society? Or is it, and here we will focus on Yhwach's second side story, that Souken was present in the real world when Yhwach invaded the Soul Society, and when the Quincy's lost the war, they escaped to the real world again. And so the Shinigami decided to attack the remaining Quincy's in the real world in order to make sure that this incident will not be repeated again. Because Yhwach said something important. He gave his soldiers one side of the story, that the Quincy's was attacked by Shinigami in the real world. I mean, he didn't say to them, we are the ones who started the attack. He only told them what was after that invasion that was in the Soul Society. Therefore, if we took the story of Yhwach, we can assume that Souken was in the real world and he witnessed the arrival of Yamamoto and his squad. And so Souken decided to flee with the rest of the Quincy's into the shadows of the Society. And this may explain why Souken was able to tell that there was a war 1,000 years ago, and even to know that Yamamoto was one of the main factors in the Shinigami's victory. Of course, someone might say, but what about the time factor? Isn't the Quincy's after all humans, so their lives will be short? Yes, it's true, but it seems that the shadows in which the Wanderer live doesn't expose to the factor of time, because Busby and Hirschfeld 1,000 years ago were young, and they remained 1,000 years ago in the shadows, yet no factor of time affected them. So I think Souken stayed for maybe 800 years with the Wanderer in the shadows, during which he was able to learn everything that has something to do with that war that took place 1000 years ago, and about Yhwach and all the secrets of the Wanderreich. Perhaps during that period he tried to convince the rest of the Sternritter that they had to stop the research that we're doing, the most prominent of which is the modification of the secret release or the final form and its development into the Vollständig that we saw with Sternritter. And I think the most prominent reason why Souken was against these researches is that the Vollständig gives their owners a creepy forms and appearance far away from their holy forms, and we have an example of this, is what Ichigo told Kilgi. When the latter turned into the Vollständig form, at first Ichigo was wondering if the form he saw now in front of him is the same as Yuryu's. Kilgi Oppi replied that it was not like that, and that form expired 200 years ago, and that the one who kept using it was Souken Ishida, who opposed their research and development. Ichigo replied, "It is good that it's not like Yuryu's, because if he turned into something as disgusting as you are now, I'd accidentally cut him off." That's why I said that maybe Souken, when he spent 800 years inside the walls of the Wanderreich, he tried to convince them not to do this research, and when he failed to do so, they expelled him. Because if we go back to Souken's diary, we will find this page where we see the castle of the Wanderreich. It looked like Souken had drawn his last look at the castle before he left to the real world, and here we will come to another period of time. Of course, I already mentioned in a previous video that it is possible that Souken joined the Wanderreich in the last 200 years, but due to the new information we have in this page, I chose the possibility that Souken lived more than 1000 years ago, and as I said, 800 years in the shadows, and was expelled after that to live in the real world. So when Souken came to the world of living, there was no doubt that he had several ideas, and one of them is how to get rid of Yhwach. And here again we will have to go back to the book of Souken, exactly this page. Souken here wrote about the case of the Kaiser Gizan, and there are also these two pictures. A picture of the Quincy's soldiers while they are exposed to the Auswehr, and the second is Yhwach received that power that he stole from the Quincy's. The question that arises here is when Souken Ishida became aware of the Auswehr. Did Yhwach use it 1000 years ago? Because if you notice with me, Souken didn't draw an ordinary Quincy's that exposed to that ritual, but rather soldiers like Sternritter, and exactly the first generation that was 1000 years ago. Or did Souken talk about the Auswehren that Yhwach did when he woke up, and that Auswehren that led to the death of both Masaki and his daughter-in-law Kachigiri? And here is where there is a lot of ambiguity, because we don't know for sure when Souken died. Is it before or after Yhwach's Auswehren? Because if we took the possibility that Souken had drawn this scene based on the Auswehren that caused the death of Kachigiri and Masaki, so this means that Souken was alive when Yuryu's mother died, and I think there is some signs of that. If we go back to Yuryu's first flashback with his grandfather and his father Ryuken, we will find that the context of all the scenes indicates that Yuryu's mother was deceased. Yuryu was only talking to Souken and his father, and there is no mother. So that even those who only followed the arc of the Soul Society will understand that Yuryu's mom does not exist. So again, if it appears that Souken was alive when Yhwach performed that ritual, then here we will enter into another tale of mystery that has something to do with Yuryu and Ryuken, and also Souken's mysterious death. So as we said, it is clear that Souken at some point in his life started to think how to stop or kill Yhwach, but maybe he was seriously starting to do so when his daughter-in-law Kachigiri died because of the Auswehren and Yuryu survived, because that incident was a big red flag for both Souken and Ryuken. If Yhwach killed Kachigiri by this ritual, who can stop him from doing it again? So Souken may have dissected some Quincy's corpses who died from the Auswehr and found in their hearts some silver, and Souken named it the Silver of Stillness. I don't know how Souken came up with this idea, but it seems that he somehow had mixed that silver that he extracted from some corpses with a sample of Yhwach's blood. Yes, I said in a previous video that Souken may have been a surgeon. Otherwise, how did he know that silver is found inside the heart of those who are subjected to the Auswehren? And therefore, perhaps in those centuries that he spent inside the Wanderreich, he was able to take a sample of Yhwach's blood when he was sealed, and later when he added that silver to the blood of Yhwach, perhaps he noticed certain changes that made him extrapolate that theory. The theory is that if Yhwach's blood was mixed with silver, all his abilities would stop for a certain moment. And so he told Ryuken about this. Another thing remains mysterious: did Souken do something for his son Ryuken, so that he too would be immune from Auswell? And I think this is what happened, because the novel confirms that Ryuken is also immune to Auswell. And Yuryu said in the first episode of the second part that he found in Souken's diaries the reason for his survival from Auswell. So Souken may be that as long as he knows the secret of Yuryu's survival, he will want to protect his son Ryuken as well, and he may have given him some medicine or performed a technique on his heart. And don't forget guys, that when Ryuken wanted to restore his son's power, he shot him with an arrow in the right side of his heart in order to restore the Quincy power of Yuryu. So it is possible that Souken may have done the same thing with Ryuken. Finally, it remains to talk about the death of Souken. Souken's death is shrouded in mystery. If he was an ordinary person, we would say that his death was normal. An old Quincy, a minor character, was attacked by a holo and end of the story. But we're talking here about Souken Ishida. Can a former generator in the Wanderreich, and with all that knowledge, would simply be defeated by 5 holos? Frankly, I don't think so. And I see Masaki's scenario in Souken's story, but in a different way. So the story that we know from Yuryu's perspective is that 5 holos surrounded Souken and defeated him. And because of the Shinigami's delay in helping his grandfather, he died. Yuryu's story is undoubtedly what happened, but there is inaccurate point on Yuryu's story. Yuryu the kid had a misconception about his grandfather Souken. He was only seeing that picture that Souken wanted to show him. An old man with weak body, all he knows is that he loves peace, and he told him the story of the Quincy's who became extinct 200 years ago. So all this information were just the head of an iceberg. Souken didn't tell him that he was a generator in the Wanderer. He didn't tell him about the conflict that was 1000 years ago, and made him look at him in a different way from what Souken is. So when Ryuken said that he was the last Quincy, he probably wasn't lying, because his father Souken seems to have provided him with all the full facts about the Quincy's, about the Wanderreich, but he didn't want to involve Yuryu in this matter. And so they gave their child Yuryu the idea that they are the last survivors of the Quincy's. So in the end guys, if we say that Souken died after Yhwach woke up and did the Auswehren, so I think that there was a meeting between Yhwach and Souken, and perhaps they had a fight when Souken has to release his final form, and that's what made him lose his power, and that's why he was defeated against the holos, because as you know, using that technique will cause you to lose all your power, and I think this is what happened to Souken, and that's why he defeated against those 5 holos. It remains to point out that Souken's death really occurred, but the Shinigami took his soul to the Soul Society and they gave it to Mayuri, who tortured him until he died. In the end guys, as you can see, Souken is not an ordinary character, but he is the key of this arc, and Kobo needs to delve more in his background. And so guys, give me your opinions and see you in my next video.